Hi there, I'm Sean Akisami and I'll be talking a little more on pricing your photography. The reason I decided to expatiate more on this is because I feel this is a topic that is not only a challenge for new photographers coming into the industry, it's also a challenge also for present photographers that have been in the industry for a while now. As we all know, the industry is getting more and more competitive, and it's still not an excuse not to be professional in the way we charge our clients. I'll be sharing with us today two of the recent experiences that I've had with two clients, and I hope it will really help us. The first one was a client that contacted us from the United States of America. That was a few months back, and they were requesting for 6 pictures of 3 different types of trees, one of them including the Iroko tree. Apparently, I actually did not know that the Iroko tree only grows in West Africa, so they needed a professional photographer that will take good pictures of Iroko tree, not just the tree but also of its leaves, and then 2 other trees that up till then I didn't know what they actually look like. So they asked me to submit a quotation of what it will cost if I were to be the one going to photograph it. And for such an assignment, I had actually never charged for a job like that. And one of the things that I did then was to contact my friends, my colleagues that had actually been in the industry longer than I have, and the first person I called was Kelechi Amadiobi. He gave me some wonderful tips, in charging, them. One of the most important things he told me was to make sure they deposit at least 75% before I proceed. And that was one thing you should know. You should never proceed on any job unless they've deposited. Worst case scenario, they should at least deposit at least 50%. I called another colleague of mine, Ade Plumter, and he gave me some advices that were also very useful. And the last point of advice I got was from a book that I recommend every one of you guys get. It's Best Business Practices for Photographers, and it's by John Harrington. It's a very good book, a very, very good book that actually helped me a lot. In fact, I discovered that if John Harrington, the author, if he was actually based in Nigeria, he probably would have been the one to actually get the job. And the pricing that I eventually gave them was based on the quotations I actually got from John Harrington's book. The book was written about 4 years ago, and for a job like this, he quoted based on how many days the job would have taken to complete. Yes, they needed just 6 pictures, but Iroko tree, for example, not many of us might know, actually does not grow anywhere. So I realized I had to do research, look for where Iroko tree is, and discovered that I had to leave, the city that I am presently in, Lagos State. I had to travel to another state, and at the end of the day, I budgeted that it would take about 4 to 6 days, which eventually took me about 6 days, and it was based on the amount of days that I gave them a quote. And I had to break it down very well, like my colleague Kelechi advised me. I broke everything down in stages. I didn't just give them a total sum that this is how much it will cost you. I gave them, for a job like this, I will have to take my assistant and we'll have to stay in a hotel for so days. This is the hotel cost. This is my assistant's fee per day. This is my own bill per day. And the total came to $3,500. Apparently, they had actually sent a mail, the same mail, asking for quotation to other photographers too. Till today, I don't know who the other photographers are. And I got a mail back from the client telling me that my quote was actually the most expensive, that it's too much. How can I be charging $3,500 just to submit 6 pictures of leaves? That it was on the high side, that they had gotten another photographer apparently in Lagos, Nigeria too, that would do the same job for $1,500. And I told them that if you feel that person will do that same job for $1,500, it's actually to your advantage if you hire the person. They went ahead and hired the person, only for me to get a call from this same client about 2 weeks later asking me to do the job. Apparently the photographer they went ahead to choose messed up their job. I don't know what exactly he did, but they told me that the guy did not take the pictures to their satisfaction, so they wanted me to take it, but they were saying, but your price is still too high, can't you come down? One of the things I actually factored in when giving them a quotation was to look at the other option they will actually have if they were not considering me. It was a company that I felt if their next option was actually to fly down a photographer from US, UK, wherever the guy may be, to fly him down to Nigeria to, take such a picture. And I figured out how much would they have paid for the hotel, the airfare, the accommodation, and all those fees. And I figured out they will be spending nothing less than between $5,000 and $10,000. So I thought to myself that $3,500 is still a fair deal. Either way, we went ahead and bargained and we settled for $2,500. And at the end of the day, I took the pictures. One thing about this job was actually the fact that, yes, although it's important to actually get the deposit before you proceed on any job, I realized that this was a client that I actually wanted to have a relationship with for future purposes. So I decided to go ahead to take the picture, most especially because of the reputation a lot of Nigerians have had. So I decided that I was going to prove to this client that there is a Nigerian that actually can do things the right way. So I talked with Kelechi and eventually we settled on, after taking the pictures, I was going to watermark each and every soft copy with the logo of our company, so that either way, they wouldn't be able to use it until they actually paid for the ones they needed exactly. So I took the pictures, sent them the low resolution, mostly because they've not paid, of course, watermarked it, they loved it, and that was the first time I actually get paid from a client that was not based in Nigeria. The point I want to bring out from there is the fact that many times when you are quoting for a job, it might not be to your best advantage if you try to be the cheapest photographer in quotes. One thing that is really important is to ask around photographers that have been in the field, doing what you've been asked to quote for. Ask them how much it is they will quote if they were in your shoes. Ask them as many questions as they can, because at the end of the day, you just want to make sure that you've not undercharged yourself in any way. Not just undercharging yourself, but you also don't want to price yourself out of the market. The reason I settled for $3,500 was I figured that if this guy was charging that rate 4 years ago, of course by now his rate would have increased. I figured that would still be a good rate to charge an American, timber client, that needed such pictures. So that was my first experience with, a foreign client. The second experience is actually more with a client based in Nigeria here. They requested me to submit a quotation for training them on photography for 3 days, and the location of the training is actually about 6 hours drive. For those of us that are Nigerians that know where Warri is, they wanted me to travel all the way to Warri to train them for 3 days. And then, you have to factor in the fact that I definitely will leave the day before the training or come back the day after. So we already had 5 days in quote. So the bill I gave them actually had about 3 different segments. The first segment was the trainer's fees, and that's my fee, of course. The second segment was my assistant's fees. They actually get paid too for coming over to assist me. And the third segment was also the cameras that we'll be renting for the training. We gave them the quote for the cameras, billed them about $200 for each camera that we'll be bringing, bill them for my assistant also $200 for each day, for the 3 days, so 3 days we're looking at about $600 for the assistant. Okay, and the final part was my trainers' fees, in which I bill them $2,000 per day. Okay, the total came to somewhere about $7,000, roughly. And the reason why I'm sharing this was actually the call that ensued after I submitted the quotation. So I got a call from this organization telling me that they actually did not have a problem with my assistant's fees. Neither did they have a problem with the cameras that we were renting. In fact, I suggested, we rent just 5 cameras because we're training about 20 people. So we'll have to break them up into groups of 4. So they even suggested that we could even increase the amount of cameras we're bringing to about 10 because 5 might not be enough. The part that they had a problem with was my trainers' fees. I was billing them $2,000 per day. So for 3 days, that came to about $6,000. And the first thing he said to me was that even Ben Carson doesn't charge as much as $2,000 per day. First of all, there's one thing I hate when it comes to pricing, in my photography. I hate it when I'm being compared to any other person. At least it would have been a little better if they had compared me to maybe another leading photographer in the industry, but they compared me to Ben Carson, who first of all is not a photographer. And the question I asked them was, who is Ben Carson? Of course, I knew who Ben Carson was. I was like, Ben Carson is a great heart surgeon, in the United States. And I was like, first of all, if Ben Carson is not charging more than $2,000 to train people per day, then he's not serious. Second of all, if I am charging more than Ben Carson, then maybe because I'm better than Ben Carson. Okay? One thing you have to realize, you probably will get clients, and there's a good chance you've actually come across clients that once you've submitted your quote, they tell you that, I know this photographer that gave me a cheaper quote. Many times when I get statements like that, the first thing I tell them that, look, if you found somebody that can do it for you, bring the same value that I bring to the table at a cheaper price, please, ma'am, please, sir, do not hesitate to hire the person. Apparently, there's a way they are doing it cheaper, and, it will be to your advantage. Okay, so I was really, really disgusted for him to have compared me to Ben Carson, because we are definitely not doing the same thing. The other, example you now mentioned was there's even this accounting company that came to teach us on accounting, and they didn't charge us more than $400 per day. How can you be charging $2,000 per day? That, and many times, the issue when it comes to pricing for me is really not the amount that I give. Most of the time when I come across a client that actually appreciates what I'm bringing to the table, there are situations in which I could even end up doing the job for free. Yes, for free. Believe it, I actually do some jobs for free, depending on how much I feel the client appreciates my photography. Okay, but when you come to the table telling me that you know somebody that can do this for you for $1, why am I doing it for $10? Then I'll let you know that, look, that means you don't even know the value that I bring to the table at all. Okay, so I eventually had to let them know that, look, I'm probably might not be the right person that you guys might work with at the end of the day. The reason why I'm sharing that is because this is not the first time, a client has told me that, my quote was actually higher than someone else's. Of course, you might have experienced such, and in many situations, you probably have actually reduced the price that you quoted. First, one thing you have to actually note is the fact that if you are quoting any price for any job, it's important that you actually are sure of your brand, of the quality you bring to the table. Don't just quote a price, maybe, okay, you need us to photograph your wedding, and just quote, okay, I'll charge you $1,000. And then, like we do here in Nigeria, the next thing a client will ask you is, how much is the last price? That's one thing I try not to do. If you're asking me how much is the last price, I tell you, sorry, I don't negotiate my prices. If it's not too comfortable for you, you could look for someone else. The reason I don't negotiate it is by the time I start working on your job, I don't want to negotiate the quality I'll bring to the table for you too. Okay, of course, there are grounds in which I could reduce my price and all that, but it shouldn't be because somebody is begging me, somebody feels that I'm not worth it. First of all, if they feel I'm not worth it, that should be the time for you not to take that job. Okay, at this junction, I hope that you've watched the prior video we did on pricing your photography, in which I gave the formula for you to calculate all your costs and then use a multiplication factor of between 3 and 7. Okay, the reason why I felt the need to do this was because in both examples that I've shared with us now, my cost was actually little to nothing. For example, how much does it cost me to actually go to Warri to train people? I mean, think of it, they're actually paying for my airfare, paying for my accommodation. So the worst case is just whatever amount I'll need to cool my voice or whatever. But the fact is, I'm not spending much. The quotation I ended up giving them was how much I felt I was worth. Okay, so it's really, really important. I was a little angry with this client, and I felt a lot of you guys might actually need to learn from this too. The quotation I gave them was based on what I was worth, and if it's more than what Ben Carson would charge for training, then that means either I'm better than Ben Carson, or Ben Carson is undercharging, or whatever. I hate being compared, and you shouldn't be compared to someone else. If somebody tells you that what this quotation you are giving me is even more than what Kelechi will charge, or more than what Leke Adenuga will charge, tell them this is what I feel is okay for me. Because by the time you start reducing your prices, believe it or not, there's a chance that even the quality might reduce, or they would even appreciate it. One other thing they mentioned on the telephone conversation was the fact that if I take this job, there's going to be a lot of opportunities that will come my way just for accepting this job. The only thing that I should do is just to reduce my fee from $2,000 per day to $400 per day. And then, a door of opportunities will open to me. And I told them that, first of all, I've gotten to where I've gotten because mostly I've had clients that paid me for what I was worth. And then from there on, of course, doors of opportunity will open. I do not recommend that you succumb to somebody telling you, please reduce your price, because the people that you meet once you do my job will bring many, many more jobs for you. Charge based on what you feel you are worth, whether or not somebody brings referrals or not. So the bottom line is, whatever you are charging people, there are many situations in which, the multiplication factor of 3 to 7 times your total cost might actually not, come into play. But whatever you are charging, it helps for you to consult, your fellow photographers in the industry. If you don't have any friends that are photographers, there should be at least books that you can read. If you don't even have books to read, one of the things I do is go to websites. There are photographers that I check, their price listing, and, try to get an idea of how to price for a particular job. Okay? It's better to act, around and just make sure you are still at least in the ballpark of what is considered, reasonable. If at all you are going to be giving any compromises, it should be to your own terms. Okay, I'm guessing some of you might not mind, being compared to other photographers, but it's something I personally don't like, because what I believe I bring to the table is different from what another photographer brings to the table, even if it's a photographer that is based in US or UK. We all have our different strengths. Okay, so I hope this has been a blessing. If you have any questions whatsoever, don't hesitate to send me a mail at info@elophotos.com, and let us know if all these videos is actually making any sense. Okay, I really appreciate your feedback and comments. Thank you for viewing so far. Stay tuned.